The work session for the Annapolis City Council on Thursday, April 17th, 2025 will be called to order at a little bit after 3. At this time, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. City Attorney, please present today's item.
Yes, sir. The item today is presentation, ID 525, City Council Work Session, Budget Overview and Review of the City Council Budget Binder.
Welcome. How you guys doing? Been working hard. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. You ready for us? All right. Yeah. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. For the record, my name is Jake Trudeau, Budget Manager for the City of Annapolis. I'm joined today by members of our dedicated budget team, Grants Accountant Suzanne Flaherty, Budget Analyst Capri Turner, and Senior Budget Analyst Darren Johnson. Over the past 7 months, our team has devoted approximately 4,706 hours to the development of the FY26 budget. This is a responsibility that we do not take lightly. We recognize that our work has a direct and meaningful impact on the residents of Annapolis. While we continually strive for perfection, we remain mindful that we are human. That said, I could not be more proud or more grateful for the unwavering commitment and professionalism of this team. We also want to extend our sincere thanks to everyone whose collaboration and support helped us reach this milestone. Your partnership has been instrumental in bringing this budget to completion. Mr. Mayor, and to Alderwoman Finlayson, Alderwoman Pindell-Charles, and Alderman Arnett, this marks the final budget we will work together in your current capacities. It has truly been an honor to play a part in helping you realize your visions, the goals of this council, and the aspirations of the citizens of Annapolis. Thank you for the opportunity and for your continued trust and leadership. With that, I will turn it over to Assistant City Manager, Vicki Buckland.
I will also add my voice to Jake's that there's a lot of care and time that goes into developing the budget. A lot of different pieces of information that have to come together. And part of what makes that difficult is that those numbers are never static. They're always a little bit of a moving target. And so, there's a certain amount of that time that's spent just trying to nail those numbers down enough so that you can get a static budget that's in front of you. At the end of the day, the goal of any budget is to advance the interests of the city and to get us closer to a vision of what it is that we think that the city of Annapolis could be. It is inevitable that there are some places where we hit everything spot on, and there are places where we hit it a little off center maybe, and where there are adjustments. That's not an indictment of our budget process or of the intentions or skills of the people that are involved. It's that it's a very big and complicated job. And my hats are off to the team and all of the care. There was a lot of collaboration this year with the departments. And I really appreciate the care that this team put into getting the document together and gathering all of those perspectives together. So I want to give this team a special shout out for the care that they spent putting it together. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's take an outlook for 25 closeout. So general fund revenue projection is coming in at 109 million. That's close to 900,000 over budget. Whereas our expenditure projection is about 6 million under budget. So we've got a projected surplus of about 6.7 million. That's primarily due to vacancies, and I've listed the 3 top departments here. So that's police, Recs and Parks, and planning and zoning. Good news, we have no property tax rate increase in the FY26 budget. Our assessed value of property and other general fund revenues have really stabilized the general fund. Our recurring revenue is projected to increase by 5.6 million over projected 25. That's also primarily due to the growth in property taxes, which is 4.5 million, and the growth in administrative reimbursements, which is 2 million. Fiscal year 25 general fund balance is projected to be strong, providing for that 15% reserve and additional funding in the 3 additional reserves. Visually, you can see this here. This is also reflected in your budget book. You can see where we're going to land right here in the middle, our projected FY25 balance after the transfer of reserves. Here's our program 26 revenue and appropriations, and then our projected 26 fund balance. Revenue assumptions for 26, taxes. This is our second year of our 3-year assessment with an increase of approximately $4.5 million over projected 25. An increase for license and permits, an increase of $347 over 25 budget, preliminary due to an increase in fees by planning and zoning. Fines and forfeitures remains relatively flat compared to 25. Interest, rent, and other, we have accounted for a decline in interest in the 26 budget compared to 25 projected. Intergovernmental, income taxes. We'll talk about this in depth a little bit later, but we've got a decrease of $2.3 million or 23% over the 25 budget. We've fully committed our ARPA funds in 25, and there was a slight increase in hotel motel tax, over 25 projections. Charges for services, we've got a 4% increase over 25 projections, and we've accounted for the closure of City Dock. Other revenue, this increase again is primarily due to the increase in administrative reimbursements. Our challenges, the potential downward fluctuation of interest rates, which we've talked about. 61% of our revenue is from property taxes. You've heard me say this before. I truly feel like we need to diversify our general fund revenue. The uncertainty of how City Dock closure will truly impact our revenue streams. We did account for a 20% loss of revenue. The volatility of income taxes, and the annual departmental review of fees and fines. In a perfect scenario, we would increase those every year, right? Because costs increase. Salary is a portion of that. And then how will the transportation fund impact the general fund in future years? Here's a visual representation of the state income tax revenue that we've seen. You'll see the dotted orange line is a trend line, and you'll see that it's all over the place. So our 25 budget number, we were looking at how 22, 23, and 24 was trending, right? We're out of COVID at that point, and we budget accordingly. 25 projections are coming in lower than that, so we've adjusted our 26 budget to that as well. General fund expenditures by category. We don't show this graphically in the budget book, but it's been an item of interest in years past. So you can see salaries and benefits makes up majority of our budget here. And then showing this graphically. So 26 expenditure projections. The good news, a 4.5% overall growth in general fund budget. Revenue growth and the tightening of expenditures is allowing new initiatives in departmental budgets. The class and comp study is fully reflected in the budget. Some challenges that we faced. Inflation and competition for job candidates is causing regular vacancies and challenges departmental bandwidth. Steady inflation puts pressure on non-personnel expenses, and this year we have a 9% increase in healthcare premiums. This is graphically a departmental total as a percentage of the total general fund. So the next couple of slides are going to talk about the council priorities that you all discussed in January. This may not be perfectly a reflection of what you all have talked about, but we want to say, we did hear you, and these are the things that are included in the FY26 budget. So sidewalk maintenance. We have an annual funding of $600,000 for sidewalk repairs. That's in the capital book. We've increased the contract services in DPW. We've included a second council associate. There's no round of applause. There you go. Thank you. Economic development. This includes funding for AAEDC, a contribution for CoStar and City Data widgets, memberships, marketing materials, and a CRM platform database. Includes funding for Downtown Annapolis Partnership, Annapolis Arts Districts and Flowers Downtown. It also includes funding for DAP holiday decorations and fireworks, and includes funding for Annapolis 250. Pedestrian infrastructure. These are capital projects. Pedestrian activated crosswalk on Benby Road at Baywoods, another one on Cedar Park Road, traffic safety improvements, traffic signal or circle and safety improvements on Hilltop Lane, the WE, College Creek Connector Trail, connecting communities, and Hilltop Lane hiker-biker connection. Support for vulnerable citizens. I will highlight a couple here. You guys can read through at your leisure. Continuation of Food Fridays. We have the warming and cooling centers, a therapeutic recreation program. We've stocked the OCS van with supplies. We've got some citywide public water access through North Street Park and College Creek. Annapolis Walk Park improvements. Our Affordable Housing Trust Fund budget for FY26 is $1.2 million. Opioid Restitution Fund budget for FY26 is $154,000. And we have emergency temporary housing funds in the FY26 budget. Positions added in 26. The general fund. We've placed a council associate in Office of Law because that's where our other one is. Planning and zoning has added a property maintenance inspector, a senior planner, and administrative assistant. The majority of that is paid for by an increase in fees. And I'll let Director Jakubiak talk more about that in depth at his presentation. But a particular fee hasn't been increased since 2008. Finance, we've added a payroll person. OIT, we've added a network engineer, cybersecurity specialist, and ITS specialist. Recs and Parks, we've converted a crew leader to a park foreman. In the enterprise and internal service funds, we've added a fleet analyst. Sewer and water have both added a public works maintenance worker and utility mechanic. And transportation converts two part-time positions into a full-time supervisor. Police department, we have the items that we provided for in 26. We've allowed them to replenish their clothing and equipment stock. Funding, we've provided funding for respiratory screening, less lethal supplies and equipment, an unmanned aircraft systems, replacement equipment, and a contractual UAS program manager. We've also provided funding for a valve control upgrade and an emergency generator. We've also converted the special events coordinator, a camera monitor, a community outreach coordinator, a body-worn camera supervisor, an external project facilitator, and an IT project manager to civil service. Fire department. This includes funding to purchase safety equipment and replace obsolete equipment. It also includes funding for a boiler replacement at Taylor Avenue and Forest Drive. OEM, we provided for funding for Alert Annapolis, the citywide preparedness exercise, and additional cell phone for a planner. The first two are because we've experienced the grant funding decrease over time and the cost of increase, so we need to cover that gap. Non-personnel enhancements for 26. The mayor's office. We've added funding for boards and commissions training and planning and zoning. We've added funding for digitizing records, critical inspections and emergency storm response, and additional contractual services for a mechanical inspector and the film festival. In the city manager's office, a federal lobbyist, leaf blower voucher program, and Annapolis 250. Central services, we've added funding to advance capital projects. OIT, we've added funding for ADA compliance remediation, training, and strategic plan funding. TPW, we've added funding for updating traffic signs for reflectivity, a large brine tank and spreaders in the snow division, and additional contractual service funds in E&C. And we've added funding to the water fund to replace 2 vehicles. Recs and Parks, we have a velocity equipment and upgrades, youth football program, special events, special projects for teens and seniors, increase the funding for training and education, rents and leases for Latchkey, and provided additional funding for camps and classes. This also includes funding needed for the esports arena, gym, and Stanton Center. In the Harbor Master, we've also provided funding for another vehicle. Internal service funds. The self-insurance fund FY26 budget is $3.9 million. This is a decrease from 25. This is also based on an actuarial analysis. The health insurance fund is $14 million in 26. This includes a 9% cost increase for both the city and employees. The fleet replacement fund is $1.3 million. The city is exploring a capital lease replacement program to purchase vehicles in the fall of this year. And the fleet operations fund is at $2.9 million in 26. Pension costs in 26, we've actually seen a decrease in police and fire. It went from 34.82% of salaries in 25 down to 31.33% of salaries in FY26, whereas the state pension has increased from 11.97 to 13.28. Parking fund activity. What's to note here in 26 is that we are using parking fund balance to balance the fund in FY26. You can see in 24 that we had, if you all remember, the concession payment that added the fund balance. We are actually tapping into that fund balance in FY26. Transportation fund impacts. The city is, as you remember, we baked in 1.96 million of ARPA funds in 25. We plan to use that. Parking fund is sending 2.6 million in transportation in 25. In 26, there are no ARPA funds remaining. And we are transferring $4 million from the parking fund to balance the transportation fund. And as you heard me say in January, my moment of caution here, we're facing a structural deficit in this fund if we continue, as all federal supplements will be depleted and state funding has remained flat for years while costs continue to increase. This graphically shows transportation revenues from 2019 to 26. You can see the yellow section there is the state grants, which have remained flat. DPW enterprise fees. We will have a presentation during the Finance Committee meetings by Stantec that will further, yes. This one? Oh, I'm sorry. That's correct. I can send you this electronically so you can see the colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's other, like there might be like, every so often they'll go for a capital grant, but majority of that you're going to see in 24 especially is ARPA. All right. Sewer rates, we've increased that by 4.75%. The same for water. Watershed Restoration Fund has increased by 15%, and the Refuse Fund has increased by 10%. In the DPW section, there is a sample quarterly bill that you can review. All right, this is what I'm excited about. We've made some improvements to the capital projects reporting. I want to give a shout out to Darren, who was a big part of this, and Sean and Josh at IT. They helped us with this process. So we have an online capital budget book with an interactive map this year, and I will send you the link. But let me walk you through. This is our capital budget book electronically. And what we've added here, Julian, is there any way to switch? Oh. I don't think there's any way to switch. Nope. All right, well, let me just walk you through. I'm going to turn this around for council. Am I allowed to do that? Am I violating anything by doing that?
We can't see. But
all right, I'm going to talk you through. So basically what this is it's a map of the city, and there are points where the capital projects reside on the city, in the city. And so when you click on those points, like for example, pickleball, right? We click on that. See, he's going to try and perfect. Thank you. All right, so here we go. Thank you, Julian. So I clicked on the link, and this is a landing page, okay? And then all these dots represent a capital project. So if I click on right here, pickleball court lights, is it not showing? So by Primrose, Julian, if you go down, all over to the left a little bit, right there, down a little bit more. Right there. Click on that one for me. Thank you. All right. So, and then click on more info. This is the project page. Okay. So This is something brand new that we've done. It's still in development. We plan on adding more in the summer to this page. But if you could scroll down for me a little bit, Julian, you'll notice when you go through the capital book, what's new is the operational impact. This is something that we've started this year. It takes a lot of effort from DPW, but where we could quantify it, it's reflected in the capital book. We've also added lead department and supporting department. So if you have questions, you know who to reach out to. And if you could scroll down a little bit more for me, Julian, please. In the funding schedule, we've broken out approved grants and pending grants. And that's it. Thank you. We can go back to the presentation, please. Thank you. Yes, thank you. And respectfully, I do have to shout out to Capri here because she was one of the brainchilds behind this as well. All right. Takeaways for 26 and the future. So as we talked about in January, the city has remained financially stable throughout the last 7 years. Financial policies and careful budgeting efforts have resulted in strong fund balance reserves. A significant amount of grant funds have been awarded and sought for projects. The city, as we talked about, does need to seek ways to bolster the transportation revenue. And just a reminder, FY26 is year 2 of the 3-year assessment cycle. And we've also talked about the need of diversification of general fund revenue. Budget timeline. You guys know I love calling out when those budget amendment ideas are due. And you should have received in your email a Google form that'll help you fill out the required information that we need to draft those amendments for you. Please reach out if you have any questions for us. And lastly, the budget team would like to dedicate this presentation to former Finance Director Jody Dickinson. Thank you, Jody, for your unwavering belief in us and for sharing your invaluable wisdom throughout the years. You will truly be missed. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Arnett. Sure.
If you want to direct me to what slide you'd like me to show, and I can. Okay.
The mic on?
I was surprised by the big surplus for planning and zoning. I mean, we've known about the float in police, but planning and zoning and parks both. I assume when we get into the budget binder, we'll understand why, but is there a quick answer?
I would not necessarily for the projections. I think it's something we should talk about during their budget presentation so they can speak more eloquently on that. It is a combination for those two in particular. It's a combination of vacancies and non-personnel expenditures, just an overall departmental look. Primarily, though, it is due to vacancies.
So as an alert, when we get into the budget process and when the chair and the finance committee will allow other people to speak, I have been continually concerned about the impact of conservative budgeting, both underestimating revenues and overestimating expenditures, which I don't personally feel gives us an accurate reflection of what the budget is likely to be. And I think I saw later on as we flew through here, maybe it's on this next page. Yeah, the recurring revenue, or no, it's someplace where it looks like there's going to be yet again another big fund balance. And one of my concerns about fund balance is it tends to leave a lot of money for one-time only spending, which I think could be better rather than individual council projects, could be better served to reserve for like potential shortfalls in transportation, could be used for more pay-go for capital projects, could even, dare I say it, be a reduction in the tax rate, since we continue to have every year, year by year, at least $4 million of these fund balances, which tells me every year And I do believe in conservative budget, but every year we've been over budgeting, and that could be those fund balances could be used more productively. So, I mean, that is a comment on the fly. It's more appropriate to make that when we actually get into the budget process with the council. I can't find any of the other questions. I'll let other people speak. I can go back through these pages, but there are other things that I think are interesting to ask about. Well, I'm here on page 7, the volatility of income tax. Uh, that volatility is a little bit muted by our relatively small reliance on income tax, is it not? But it does. I've always wondered why we get 17% of whatever the county gets. So John Hammond will assure us that it's more than fair to the city, but I have no idea where the origin of the 17% share came from or whether it's the right share. Is it something that really fluctuates every year and the county either takes the excess or eats the shortfall? But in any event, that's certainly, again, something to be worried about. I also wonder if the volatility isn't a reporting volatility from the agencies that report the income tax revenues rather than volatility in real world. I think upcoming, because of tariffs and other things, we can expect income tax revenue to go down. And I was surprised this year for the first time I got a healthy return from the state. So maybe that's happening. Anyway, I'll stop here, but there are a lot of questions, and I guess there'll be time to go back to this in the actual council budget process.
May I respond?
Yep, absolutely.
So just keep in so on your first point, just keep in mind that we try and be very conservative with revenues and expenditures, right? So when we're doing projections, we're trying to, even though we're trying to maximize those non-personnel lines, right? And give those departments their budget. I will say too, and I got to give credit to our new finance director on this thought, is that primarily we're under budget because of vacancies, which means we don't have the personnel in-house to help us with the work, which means that we're all overworked, right? So I just caution that that's why we're under budget. And with the income taxes, what we've heard from the state is that what we've seen in the past is high capital gains, which is not repetitive in nature. So
So just respond to the overwork, and particularly the overwork in finance. On next Monday's audit committee, we're going to be looking at the transmittal letter from the outside auditor where they're pointing out that the ACFR, whoever the new name is perpetually late, and by over 200 days late. And they suggest that it's because of lack of resources. I actually talked with Jody, wondering if there wasn't some software that we could use to convert from Munis to the accounting lines. And she said, yeah, some, but a lot of it is judgment calls. So it really does. And that says to me that, again, you don't have enough staff and are overworked. And I'm going to be making that pitch in the budget. But getting that basis for the budget at the beginning of the budget process rather than towards the end of the budget process is required by code, let alone is desirable to do. So, yeah, I think you're right about getting the staffing and getting us up to the appropriate levels. I'm wondering if that isn't the same thing with the planning and zoning. They really were for a long time without staff that they really do need. I don't think planning and zoning staffing levels have recovered from our near bankruptcy experience back in 2009. So I think we really need to do that. And if we staff up, then maybe some of these surpluses will go away. I don't know that it'll ever go away in police, but there's always hope.
Thank you,
Thank
Alderman.
you.
Make a note of that. Our economist wants us to be less conservative.
I do. I do. I think maybe there's a shadow budget. There could be the formal budget, but then a budget that is more cast on actual experience and expectation. Just like in the ACFR, we do budgeted and actual. And it's noteworthy when you look, and I'm sure everybody has gone through the ACFR already. When you look at that, good. That's why you're the chair of the finance committee. But when you look at that, it's notable what we budget and then what we actually get in terms of revenues and spending.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Alderman Schandelmeyer first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So could you please go back to the slide that shows the capital project presentation? I'd love to get that URL again so we could share that out and also take a look at that on our own leisure.
Yeah, sure. I can send it to you. I will say we're still trying to update that. It's a big to reflect the 26 capital projects. It's got 25 in there right now, but that's a heavy lift to do that, and we were really focused on just getting those budgets done. But would you like me to walk you through it again, or just share the link when it's ready?
Just share the link when it's ready.
Absolutely.
What I will say is I will give a lot of compliments on that. I think that's absolutely fantastic data representation, giving people an example of where projects are in the process, where they are going, because so many times people get this idea that things aren't moving along because they're stuck in process. And while I certainly understand the frustration with the slowness of process, having that represented in a data map, I think gives people an understanding that we aren't forgetting about it. We are working on it. It is coming through slowly but surely. In regards to the lost revenue for city dock closure, so you said that's going to be around 20%. And is that going to be primarily coming from loss of event fees like the boat shows and film festivals, etc., or where's that loss of 20% coming from?
No, mainly docking, but understanding too that there might be a dock that sees a decrease, but those boats are going to go to other docks, which we have reflected an increase. If once we share the OpenGov links with you all, you can go and see line by line which accounts are impacted, and I can also send that to you as well.
Okay. And how long? And we're only expecting the 20% lost revenue for about 1 year, 2 years for the entirety of that project once it gets started.
So I can only speak on 26 alone. We've just programmed that for 26.
Okay. Thank you. And then finally, I am always going to pitch whenever we talk about surpluses and deficits and need to diversify revenue. We did have it broken down for us in the land revenue infrastructure study, a very wonderful way to strengthen our financial resiliency, spelled out for us in a very easy to understand map for folks, where we can get to a much more balanced budget without raising taxes or cutting services through better land use. I'm going to be beating that drum a whole lot, guys. But thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, and it's really a good breakdown. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Neil? Oh, I was Neil. I felt like I had to go to this side. Alderman Huntley?
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say how much I appreciate Alderman Chandler's comments about land use. It can be so easily be divorced from our budget, but it is why our budget looks the way it does, in a mostly good way, but with the bad parts too. I get a couple different questions that I'm trying to avoid the ones that we can cover in our presentations. But to start with one that's maybe kind of simple is, why was there less fringe for public? What changed with sorry, I called it fringe. I think you called it something different. But the pension requirement for public safety, why do those?
So that's based on actuarial analysis, and we get they do a big study, and we get that information from them. I believe. Do you remember the specific reasons as to why? No, but I can get you that information if you want specifics.
Okay, thank you. Along those same kinds of lines, you mentioned a 9% increase in healthcare premium, and I think we kind of just know healthcare gets more expensive. It is one of those things that consistently exceeds general increases in the CPI. Is there anything in particular causing the city's increase in healthcare premiums? One question. And then secondly, we just had this healthcare premium holiday. How does that relate to seeing this?
I'll take a stab at both of those and jump in as needed. So because the city is self-insured, those projections are based on the city's actual experiences. So the projections are, again, those are done by an outside company that comes in and looks at our experience, gives us advice about what we would need to have in that fund, given both what they're seeing in the broader market and what's happened with our own experience. The premium holiday, that's a good question. This is actually an element that's included within a couple of our negotiated agreements. And so we had gone to ask them just to point out that we were in this somewhat odd situation of, per the terms of the negotiated agreement, we're in a situation where normally that would result in a premium holiday, but we're also projecting this increase for next year. And was there sort of a trade-off to be made between those two things? In the end, we're simply following what's in the negotiated agreement, and we do that citywide. We don't piecemeal. This person gets this and that person gets that. It's just we do the same thing for everyone. But in this case, it's that way because we've got these particular terms within the negotiated agreement, and that's there for a reason, and the city is honoring that.
So when you mentioned that it's looking at specific circumstances to the city and then the broader market, was there anything that was specific to the city that we ought to be aware of? Were we higher or lower than some of our peers? Do you happen?
I only have a partial answer to that. My understanding from the meetings that we had is that this result in the city is not out of line with what they're seeing in other jurisdictions.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Oh, I'm sorry. Mrs. You have something, Alderman?
Well, no, it does seem strange because healthcare costs are continuing to go up everywhere else. And last time I asked a question about this, I was told that our workforce tended to be on average healthier than the rest of the population, which is a good thing. And it means we can have holidays, but it is contraindicated from what I think will be even worse when we have less people being Medicaid and the affordable health care insurance, but we'll see.
Yeah. Another question that I had for you is about the fines and fees schedule. So, of course, we saw a handful of those increase. Can't remember if there were any that decreased. But inflation goes up, cost of services go up. So it's like one of the ones in planning and zoning, quite a few of the ones in planning and zoning went up. And I'll talk with them about that specifically. But as a more general question, should we be more systematically indexing our fines and fees to it? Should we be slowly increasing them each year as opposed to having them jump at a large rate in some?
My answer in a perfect world, yes.
Thank you.
Let's make it perfect.
Okay, that's great. And then lastly, and it's a big one for you, but you've talked a couple times about diversification. Do you have any thoughts or recommendations on what that might look like?
I do. I think there's a lot of things happening around us that we can take a look at. For example, I've talked about speed enforcement cameras and other cameras like that, stop sign cameras, red light cameras. If you look at DC, they've made a substantial amount of revenue from those. Yes, the thought is that, those decrease over time, right, once people realize where they are. But keep in mind, too, that we are a tourist city, so that's not going to be, fully realized that way. Specifically, speed cameras, I believe, it's in Maryland law where we can use that for the transportation fund. Again, I would encourage us before we do anything to make sure all of our stakeholders have a seat at the table, right? Who's going to transportation, right? Police, everyone. But for me, I think that's a solution that's shown revenue that we could use.
I love that.
Alderman Savage and Alderman Finlayson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the very thorough presentation. A lot I'm still digesting, so I may circle back up with some questions later on, and including later in this meeting. But for now, so this part of it's kind of a question for our finance committee. We talked a little bit before the meeting, but I guess also for the city manager's office, it'd be really good to get the presentations for each department ahead of time, because especially for those of us who may not be able to attend the meetings because they're in the morning during the workday, those of us with second jobs, just because, so it'd be good to get those so we can actually have time to submit questions based on presentations. And I think you're starting Monday. The committee's starting Monday. Is that right? So do you think we'll be able to get Mondays?
So I'm first out of the gate. Departments have been asked. Kaylin has set up a shared drive destination, and they have been asked to have them in there at least 24 hours before their presentation. So that's certainly, like I said, city manager's office is first out of the gate, and that I intend to try to eat my own cooking in that regard.
Otherwise, there'll be a 5% budget.
Well, we can very easily tell you the problem children because it's a recurring issue. Which departments get it later than the others? But is there also going to be like a set format with following the performance standards?
So we sent. I sent out a template. The template this year is very stripped down compared to previous years. The guidance that I sent out was that what I want folks to focus on is the stuff that council can't read about in the budget book. So a bunch of those elements that were repeats of the budget book itself have been stripped out in favor of some slightly more generic, what have been the trends over the last year that have been affecting you, and what's that context around when I read the budget book, what other things might I need to know to make sense out of the numbers that are there? So my hope is that also by having a little bit of a stripped down version, and then the feedback we had certainly heard very clearly from Finance Committee was really wanting to make sure there was a lot of time for a good, robust conversation, which is why the limit on the presentation portion to allow more time for interaction. So my hope is by stripping that down, really focusing on what can't I read about for myself in the budget book, that it both allows time for that discussion and facilitates that discussion.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good idea. Thank you. And will there be, this might be for finance, will there be a spreadsheet again? Last year we were experimenting with a shared Google Sheet.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Will there be some kind of shared spreadsheet or mechanism to keep track of questions that we are submitting to the department? Last year there was a shared Google Sheet where I think during and after, before and after the presentations from the departments, we put all our questions and to ensure that they're responded to by.
My understanding is that's still
Yeah.
the plan. The council associate does manage that,
Okay.
but we have access to it. So that's my understanding.
I think, and just thinking ahead, I liked the idea last year, and I think it worked fairly well, but we did have an issue again with some departments not getting us responses in time for us to figure out what we want to do with amendments. So if we could just make that clear that we really need to get some responses within a certain amount of time. Let's see. Oh, so it looked like there was, and again, I have not even had a chance yet to go through the budget book, but it seemed like just from your presentation that there are a number of vehicle replacements. There were new vehicles, but also I think there was something to do with the vehicle replacement fund. But in any case, my question with that would be, are any of them electric vehicles? We seem to have an amount of money left over. I think if I'm reading this correctly, like $4.5 billion of one-time use money.
That's we do have about 4 million available of one time. I would caution to say that vehicle replacement is not a one-time expense, right? It's a reoccurring part of operating government. But I see where you're going.
Yeah.
And just to clarify too, what's in the fleet replacement budget is just to cover their debt service for 26. We anticipate that our idea for this fall is to go and do another capital lease for vehicle replacement. Aside of that, we also have the water fund has the funding to be able to send over to the fleet replacement fund. Sorry if I'm getting too much in the weeds, but basically they can purchase 2 new vehicles that they have requested. Now, our fleet manager does have a replacement list of what he wants to replace every year. We've never been able to fully fund that. But the hope is if we do this lease, and of course we've worked with Davenport on the numbers, that we can fully fund his ask over 2 cycles.
Okay. Well, and I don't know if it's going to be for the end of this term or the next one, but at some point I'm going to be introducing legislation requiring some kind of electric vehicle purchasing goal by a certain date, or if they can't meet it, to provide justification as far as why it's just not feasible. So how much is the waterfall that we get we are currently getting from the garage? Because that's going right towards the parking fund?
Correct. So now, mind you, there was a concession payment outside of let's talk reoccurring.
Yeah.
So recurring, what we're seeing is about 3.8 million year over year.
Just for the waterfall.
Correct.
Okay, not for the overall fund
That's correct.
or other revenue. Okay.
So does that mean former Director Gerald was right that he thought that the waterfall was going to be a lot more than we were planning for when we were doing the financing for City Dock? I think it was, what is the cutoff? After they make $1.5 million, then the waterfall starts, and I think we were planning on $2.5 million, and it's really 3.8.
I can't comment on his comments, but I can just tell you that it is 3.8
Yeah. All right.
that we're
Well, that's
seeing.
And that's going, you said, all to the parking fund?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's a revenue in the parking fund.
All right.
Fill it up.
Well, I thought, okay, yeah, I see. So that's what we're using for transportation, right? Thank you.
Partially, we needed to use fund balance to balance the parking fund, and then there's a substantial revenue,
And that's,
a transfer going over the transportation fund.
yeah, and
this
that's
year.
something we've been long doing, but, all right. So you said about 4 million of one-time use. Do we have is there any chart that kind of highlights overtime? Because, oh gosh, I can't remember if I'm thinking of, I know was it the Capitol or somewhere else? I think I saw some high overtime
the
costs. I'm just
lieutenant.
wondering if we could get we could dig into that, I think, per department, but I'm just wondering if the departments that have overtime are presumably Rec and Parks, Public Works, Fire, and Police. Is anyone I'm missing?
I could look transportation. I could
Oh,
look back,
transportation, thank you.
but keep in mind too, there's
they wish. They wish.
there's a certain cutoff of what employees actually get overtime. If your analysis is going somewhere else, but yes, we have particular overtime accounts in certain budgets, and I can get you, or when you get your OpenGov link, right, you can see those breakdowns, or I can get it for you. But just keep in mind that not every employee gets overtime.
Yeah, no, yeah, I understand, and I know historically what has sometimes driven that are just understaffed, right, inability to hire. But I do wonder from a city manager's perspective, again, not something we have to get into now, but what kind of controls can be put in place to make sure overtime is kept at a manageable level. Let's see. When do we get the presentations on the debt service projections?
So you mean the actual handout?
Yeah.
So they being Davenport is revising based on the final proposed. So as soon as they get that to us, I'll make sure you guys get a copy of it.
Okay. Do they have a deadline?
So they present next week, I believe.
Okay.
Tuesday, is it Tuesday? 24th? Okay. So we'll have it before then.
Okay.
Hopefully.
And another thing I often ask for, if we have a list of vacancies, but also a list of all the new positions added. I'm guessing you have it like you had in the past, which is by department, the staffing, like new staff, existing.
Yeah, it's a slide in the presentation, and then I can work with HR to get you a vacancy listing.
Okay, I'll look at that. And as far as CIP, again, just big picture, I do like the. I think that's going to be a great resource, the GIS tool. And again, point for the city manager's office. It'd be nice to have a way to track that, because when we create CIP projects, there isn't really a great way for a process set up for us to get updates on that, right? The only way for us to do that is by reaching directly out to the directors, staff, or inviting them to a committee meeting. But I'm wondering if there could be some kind of portal, if this has some kind of capability for the project managers to, say, on a monthly basis, just enter in, because I don't want to have to contact staff all the time. But if I want to just find out what the status is, I could tell, oh, this is put out for RFP, or this is your design is ready, and we can then go to them to see if we want to.
Yeah, we've actually had some conversations internally about exactly that. So we can connect.
Okay. Those are all my immediate. I'll take a break. Thanks.
Alderman Finlayson is next, and then Alderman Huntley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for a very informative presentation. My first question relates to, on page 20, we've listed the federal lobbyist as part of the budget proposal. Is the state local lobbyist also somewhere in the budget mix?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You just didn't mention that today.
Yeah, and it's in the same place in the city manager's office budget.
Okay, great. My second question relates to transit on page 24. I'm always concerned about making sure that our transportation department is funded. And so this for 26, the 4 million is going to balance their budget. So
yes, ma'am.
if it is in place, then we don't have to come up with additional funds out of the general fund to support them.
Not for 26. You are correct.
Okay, great. My next question has to do with the healthcare increase. I recall years ago when we had our first, I guess it was during the IBB process, and we overcharged our employees 6% or whatever it was at that time. And as a result of that, they received a holiday. Well, now the holiday seems to be a normal part of the procedures. So I would like to look at whether we are really overcharging them more than is needed and then giving them their money back at a later date? Or should we be actually reducing that increase? This year, it's going to be 9% for both the state and, or not state, but both the city and the employees. So I'd like for us to look more closely at how that number is reached and what the trend is. I know we used to work with Larry Uvala's company to get the data. I'm not sure. I think we have a new agency, but I would really like to hear how they came to that 9% and what the trends have been.
Yeah, and we're certainly happy to do that. In this particular case, there are some reasons why it turned out this way, and we can go into that in some more detail.
Okay.
But you are correct. My understanding obviously predates me, but my understanding is that situation that you described is part of why those provisions are in those negotiated agreements, and why it's important for the city to honor that.
Yes.
Alderwoman,
Okay.
if I may, with the state lobbyist, what I highlighted in the presentation are things that we've added as enhancements. So the state lobbyist is currently baked in as a reoccurring item unless it is cut. So we plan on funding that every year unless there is an administrative decision change or council change on that.
Okay. And are we doing the same thing with the state lobbyist?
That was the state lobbyist that I was talking about.
Oh, okay. I thought you said federal.
My apologies if I misspoke.
Yes. Thank you. And my last comment is about the CIP. I'm eager to use the new format so we can really delve into those projects and where they are in their schedule of, completion. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Huntley.
First, can we go forward one slide so we're looking again at yeah, thank you. Oh, except I can't quite see the color. Is the bar at the top, is that transfers in or is that fair related and advertising?
So I'll go through the colors.
The color at the top.
Red is fair and related advertising.
Okay.
Orange is transit county revenue. Yellow are the state grants that we've been talking about. Green, other non-recurring grants. And blue is transfer in. So that's in order of how you go up the bars as well.
Got it. Thank you. I wasn't sure if it was going up or down. But okay. So the big change here is more transfer. Thank you. So I was really trying to avoid asking questions about particular departments, but I do have two clarifying ones I'm hoping we can touch on. You mentioned holiday funding, holiday decoration funding under one of the things that was a council priority that you guys addressed. Thank you. Is that going up, or were you just mentioning that it is in the budget?
Mentioning that's in the budget.
Okay, because I think one of the concerns was that it had been in the budget before, but it hasn't gone up and costs have gone up. So thank you for
what
clarifying.
slide are you looking at?
It was about council priorities. I'm not sure which slide that was.
It's going to be
Yeah.
15, I
15.
believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Slide 13.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Includes funding for
13,
DAP holiday
yes.
decorations. It was something that I had mentioned as one of my priorities because we've had that funding and it's been steady, but because costs have been going up, what we can provide with it has been going down. But thank you. I just wanted to clarify. And then I did have one other question. I've got like 12 on here. Sorry, I'm just trying to stick with the ones that are actually clarifying. But I can't find which one that was right now. Sorry. You'll have to come back to me.
Mr. Mayor.
Are you finished?
Oh, yeah, I said you'll have to come back
Oh,
to me. Sorry.
Alderman Net.
So I want to return to slide 21. And I was going to ask the question that Alderwoman Finlayson did on the health insurance fund, but returning to the self-insurance fund, and I'm sorry the city manager isn't here, that is also the fund where we pay for lawsuits lost and things like that.
That's correct.
And I don't know the status. We had some fairly substantial lawsuits outstanding. I think one was a wrongful death that I think got settled, but it would be a good idea to know what our liability is for potential lawsuit losses. I'm not sure how those come as kind of a lump sum, so I don't know how actuaries balance that out. But also, I'd like to know again, we have both stop loss insurance, which I think is both specific and aggregate, but I think that the amount that those policy pays is like $1 million or something small. So when we get back to considering the self-insurance fund, it would be good to know what our stop loss policies look like. And then on page 22, and this is actually something to ask the chair of the finance committee, how close are we to being fully funded in our police and fire pension plan? The last time I looked at it, we were 84% funded, which is very good compared to most of the country. But I cannot believe that we're 100% funded, so now we can decrease the amount, the percent of salaries, unless that percent of salaries has gone down because we've had an increase in salary amount or increase in staff. But I've always been very concerned about the pension plan. That is our promise, our commitment to our public safety people. And I've always wanted it to be 100%. I think the highest we got was 94 when I was on the committee. But I'm a little scant at reducing the amount that we're putting into that, because I think some economic hard times are coming. I think inflation is not only going to stay, but it's going to go up. And that's going to make it very hard for them to reach the actuarial earnings assumptions in the pension plan. So I would rather sock a little bit of money away rather than reducing the amount we're contributing there. And if we increase that amount we're contributing, that will have an impact on the fund balance. So that's something I think we need to look at closely. Thank you.
Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's see, a few other things. We chatted before earlier. I think you're working on a list of past amendments. Be good to see that. And then I'd recommend kind of highlighting our urban tree forestry program. In fact, I do think it's important that it's that's rolled into our watershed restoration fund. So for the first time, that program will be entirely funded, which it's usually one of the first things to cut is our reforestation. So I think that's a good thing to make known. And let's see, like my colleague here, I'm curious. I know you can't answer this, but I am curious as to the status of the HACA lawsuit. I haven't heard anything on that in a long time. Are we still at risk of potentially losing out quite a bit of money, having to pay out? Is there any effort to get that settled? So maybe we could in the future get some kind of work session scheduled on legal updates. We haven't had that in a while.
We used to have a quarterly.
Yeah. And can you remind us on the limitations of one-time use monies?
Yes, they should not be for reoccurring items.
Not be for recurring. And so does that include,
For example, like a salary, to pay for folks' salaries. Yeah, thank you. Long-term contracts.
what about for like CIP related?
We can chat.
All right. And
PAYGO is one-time use every year.
yeah. So yeah, because I have some ideas about some other funds set up we can chat some more about. Are there any structural changes or like reorganizations, anything like that we should be aware of?
I would say under central services, we moved purchasing, and we did that last year. We've moved our risk management, our risk administrator under central services,
Into central services.
and a civil engineer who is typically has been programmed to do facilities.
And they went from public works to civil.
Yes.
To
Thank you. And the harbor master is moved back under Rex and Parks.
what? Oh, what? Didn't we just move that 2022, 23?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess
Don't we need some
We'll see what the-
legislation to do that?
we'll see what the department says.
Well, it was under Parks and Recs before, and now we're moving back.
All right. Right. I mean, just generally, I guess we'll have to think about how much reorganization we may want to do with the new administration right around the corner. But in any case, I think that's all I have. Follow up. Thank you.
Huntley,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I found my other question. Could you just explain? So I'm looking at page 21, the fleet replacement fund, and you mentioned exploring a capital lease for replacement purchases. Could you explain just
Sure.
what that means?
Yeah. So we could either transfer funding to the fleet replacement fund or from other funds to the fleet replacement fund to purchase vehicles. If they have fund balance, they can use that. We can appropriate that to use for fleet purchases, or what we've done in the past when we don't have a chunk of money to dedicate to that is explore a capital lease. So we would lease the vehicles and go through that program.
Okay, got it. So you're it's using a lease instead of a purchase, essentially.
Correct.
Is what you're exploring. Okay, that makes sense. I was trying to square how you would have a lease with a purchase, but that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
O'Neill? Yeah.
Can you talk to the pros and cons of sides that you said, because if we don't have a lot of money, you would do a lease. How does that work when we talk about, like, the fire department was in here and said every 15, but because we do such a good job of maintenance, they're able to get a few years out of it. But in a lease, isn't there, so like a residential lease where there's a limit to mileage and things like
No, I was just going to add that we currently have that structure in place, but the payments on that lump that was done 5 years ago is ending. So it would kind of be a replacement. We'd swap one in and swap one out. So there would be no additional expense added to that department per se for the year or for the 2 years that extends, but the lease goes over the life of the vehicle. So the 5 years, it would be.
right? And then do we purchase lease with option? I'm asking because if I am leasing a car at the end of my lease term, I can either choose to buy that car outright for an outrageous amount of money.
Yeah, so this is one place where our new central services director has a bunch of experience in the fleet arena. And it's one place where I'm hoping that he's able to give us some additional perspectives and additional options about pros and cons. Obviously, we've been doing this particular arrangement, so kind of continuing it for now makes a certain amount of sense until Matt's able to really get in there, work with Dan, glean that knowledge and work with them on crafting a longer term strategy.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I think amazing job, and we're really looking forward to digging into it with you guys and all the different departments along the way. We're really lucky to have a team like you guys. Thank you for it. Happy the revenues were solid. I did have a quick question on slide 12. I'm not sure if I'm just missing it. Am I missing transportation in this, or is that
So this just focuses on the general fund.
okay?
Their footprint in the general fund is small.
No, just you had said this focuses on the general fund, and the reason transportation doesn't show up strongly here is because their funding sits in a different place.
Okay.
And-
Alderman Huntley? Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to that point, I would love to see pie charts just like this one. This one's awesome. That are inclusive of expenditures and revenues, not just for the general fund, but for the whole city budget. That was something that I had looked for when I was giving a presentation to some constituents a few months ago, and I couldn't find it for FY25. Perhaps it's there, and I just couldn't find it. But that would be really helpful to be able to show people. Here's where all of our money comes from and where all of your money goes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Everybody good?
No,
Right.
we're trying to be, but we're not.
Well, great. Thank you so much, everyone. Excellent.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Give me fun. My favorite time of the year, budget time. Right, guys, is there anything else for good order? Okay, going once, going twice. I don't know. Right, I declare the meeting closed.